Right, everyone, buckle up, because the winter heading our way is already showing signs that it's going to be a serious one. And I don't mean the mild, forgettable winters we've been dealing with over the past several years. I'm talking about a winter that could grip much of the country with bitter cold, long-lasting snow, and Arctic blasts that don't seem to let up. For years, El Nino has been the quiet driver behind our mild seasons. The Pacific Ocean warms, the polar jet stream shifts north, and most of the northern United States enjoys relatively tame winters, while Arctic air gets bottled up over Canada. But right now, that all changes. El Nino is fading fast, and when the Pacific cools, the entire winter landscape begins to rearrange itself. The jet stream behaves differently. It dips, buckles, to meanders in ways that make the weather unpredictable and, frankly, dangerous. And when that happens, the doors open for polar vortex disruptions. We're talking about cold waves so powerful they could reach all the way to the Gulf Coast, with weeks of Arctic air that refuse to let go after years of mild winters. This could feel like stepping back in time to a winter from the early 2010s, relentless. A big part of what we're seeing comes from ENS, Otha El Nino Southern Oscillation. If you're new here, think of ENSO as the foundation for U.S. winter weather. El Nino warms the Pacific, La Nina cools it, and in between, we have neutral phases. El Nino pushes the jet stream north, La Nina pushes it south, and neutral conditions. Well, neutral conditions can get messy, because they allow other players like polar blocking and sudden stratospheric warming to take over. And here's the big news. NOAA has issued a La Nina advisory. That officially signals that we're entering a winter dominated by La Nina conditions, a pattern that historically brings volatile weather, extreme temperature swings, and Arctic air pushing far into the lower 48, by the way. If you'd like specific weather forecasts for your region or city, please leave them in the comments. I'll answer them individually as time allows. Also, if you like the video and subscribe to my channel, you'd be very grateful. Now, let's move on. If you remember the winter of 2013-2014, that's the kind of pattern we're starting to see again. Back then, we saw persistent cold, strong high-latitude blocking, and repeated polar vortex disruptions that made it one of the coldest winters in recent history. Chicago spent over 25 days below zero. The Deep South froze, and even Texas suffered widespread power outages and infrastructure damage. And more recent winters, like the February 2021 Texas freeze, remind us that extreme cold still has the power to cripple communities now. I want to be clear, this doesn't guarantee we'll get a repeat of 2013-2014, but the signals, we're seeing the neutral Pacific waters. The developing ridge trough pattern east of the Rockies and a negative North Atlantic oscillation all suggest that sustained cold is very likely, particularly in January and February. So let's break down what this could look like across the country. For the Midwest, Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, and Northeast, repeated Arctic fronts are likely. I'm talking long stretches of dangerous cold, wind chills that could plunge to life-threatening levels, and frozen lakes and rivers that stick around for weeks. The kind of cold that makes you feel like you've been transported back to an earlier harsher era of winter. The Central Plains, Tennessee Valley, and northern parts of the South can expect rapid temperature swings, short-lived warm spells, followed by sudden, freezing blasts. This is the recipe for ice storms, freezing rain, and treacherous travel. These temperature swings could create real challenges for people's daily lives. We'll need to be ready for them. Meanwhile, the desert Southwest and West Coast are likely to be largely protected from these Arctic intrusions. High-pressure ridges will keep California and Arizona relatively mild and dry, creating a stark contrast to the cold dominating the eastern two-thirds of the country now. Let's talk timing, because it matters. The main cold window looks to stretch from late December through early March, with the absolute harshest cold likely hitting from mid-January through mid-February. These could be multi-week stretches of below-average temperatures, sustained cold waves, and repeated Arctic intrusions that could make this winter feel extremely long. Snowfall is going to be a major story. Cities around the Great Lakes, Chicago, Milwaukee, Detroit, Cleveland, Grand Rapids could see almost constant snowfall events. It won't just be one massive blizzard. We're looking at consistent systems Alberta, clippers racing through. Powerful lake effect bands stacking week after week that steadily pile up impressive totals over the season. Even the Central Plains, Kansas City, Omaha, Des Moines, St. Louis might see more snow than they have in years, but the impact goes far beyond snow totals. Prolonged cold affects our energy systems, infrastructure, and day-to-day life. Heating demand will spike, power grids will be stressed, and in some areas, rolling blackouts could occur if extreme cold coincides with high energy use. Roads and bridges will suffer from frost, heave, and freeze-thaw cycles. Water mains could break, potholes will multiply. And farmers in the South may face challenges with crops, livestock, and water supply. And we cannot forget human safety. Wind chills that dip below 30 degrees can cause frostbite in mere minutes. Homes without sufficient heating can become life-threatening very quickly. And in extreme winters, we often see spikes in carbon monoxide poisoning as people resort to unsafe heating methods. Vulnerable populations, elderly individuals, and people in rural areas will face the greatest risk, even if we don't see record-breaking snow. This could still be one of the most disruptive winters in recent memory, simply due to the cold and its duration. The extended nature of this pattern could test the resilience of power grids, emergency preparedness systems, and everyday life in countless communities. Below normal temperatures are spreading deep into the Northwest. Storm after storm has hammered this region all fall, carving a path for an active winter. Once we layer in the rest of the data, the cold stretches east of the Rockies, across the plains, Midwest, Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, and interior Northeast. This isn't speculation. Teleconnections, sea surface temperatures, and early fall patterns all point toward a colder than normal start to December. And confidence levels are sky-high. In fact, the signals are so strong that I had to introduce a fifth layer of confidence, something I've never done before. That's how locked in the northern U.S. cold pattern is this year. Moving on to precipitation. 'Cause this is where winter really shows its personality. The Southwest. Dry. Storms tend to avoid this region in weak La Nina years, which is exactly what we're in. California, southern Nevada, and the Four Corners expect noticeably below average precipitation. Not zero, but enough that snow, chances are very low. Meanwhile, the Northwest, Northern Plains, Midwest, and Great Lakes are storm central. Systems will crash into the Pacific Northwest, ride east, and sometimes dive far south. I mean snow potential, and I mean real snow for areas that normally get hit hard, and even for some places that rarely see snow. Speaking of snowfall, here's how it looks. Southwest, low chances. Northwest, higher chances, especially in the mountains. But the real crown jewel is exactly where the cold air meets the storm track, Northern Plains. Midwest, Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, and interior Northeast. This corridor has all the pieces for major snow events. If everything lines up, we could see some serious accumulation. And yes, the South gets a shout-out. While Miami and southern Texas aren't expecting snow, areas like northern Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and northern Georgia have above-average chances for unusual snow events. Last year showed what's possible, and this winter could repeat that pattern. Now, let's step back and look at the big picture. The West Coast is split, stormy, active, and cold in the Northwest. Mild and quiet down south. The Rockies? Snow-loaded, even without extreme cold. East of the Rockies, cold, snowy, and ready for multiple Arctic blasts. The polar vortex. Signs are pointing to a split as early as late November, which could bring Arctic air surging into the Midwest and Northeast by early December. Lake effect snow is about to fire up, thanks to warm lakes and incoming cold air. The South. That's your winter battle zone, rain, sleet, freezing rain, and snow, all depending on exactly where a storm tracks. The East Coast, especially the interior. Big blizzard potential. If the troughs and storms align just right, we could be looking at major nor'easters this year. This winter has tension. It's drama and extremes. Warm versus cold, dry versus stormy, calm versus chaos. And we'll be tracking every twist, every Arctic blast, and every snowstorm together. All right? If you'd like specific weather forecasts for your region or city, leave your region or city in the comments. I'll answer them individually as I have time. Commenting is completely free. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.